So, welcome everyone for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to be here to celebrate the kickoff to the 2021 Oregon Marine Reserve's BioBlitz. My name is Will Cotton. I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and I have had the pleasure of working with the Marine Reserves, the wonderful folks at the Marine Reserves, and as well as the team at OSU and the Primed Network to host, coordinate, and support this BioBlitz project. And I'll introduce everybody here in this next slide. So I don't know how we want to do this, if the panel wants to unmute and introduce yourselves, because I think we have a few more than are just on this slide. We can go down the list. Start at the top. Margaret, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, we always start at the north. I'm Margaret Treadwell, and I'm the program coordinator for Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. Thanks so much, Will.
I don't think Paul's able to join us here tonight, but we can continue with Fawn.
Hi, I'm Fawn Custer, and I am helping to represent Friends of Otter Rock Marine Reserve. Been on their committee for a bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tara Du Bois, and I'm the communications coordinator for the Cape Perpetua Collaborative.
And I'm Tara Ramsey, and I work with the Redfish Rocks community team as the outreach coordinator.
And I'm Sarah Gravem. I am an OSU scientist, a member of PISCO, and the leader of the Primed Network. And I also have a couple more of my team here today if they want to introduce themselves.
I can start. Hi, my name is Deandra. I am a second-year undergraduate student and intern for Sarah for the Primed Network.
Hey, I'm Lily. I'm a senior undergrad at OSU, and I've been working as an intern for Primed for over a year now.
And I'm Silka. I'm a graduate student at OSU, and I've been working with Primed kind of since the beginning.
All right, thanks everyone. So just a brief rundown of what we're going to be talking tonight. I know many of you have participated in previous BioBlitzes, but many of you here tonight are, this might be your first BioBlitz, so we'll do just a brief introduction of what is a BioBlitz. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Marine Reserves here in Oregon, briefly touch on the etiquette and tide pool best practices while you're out there, some safety tips, and then an introduction to the Primed Network and some of the things that they are looking for and that will be helping them while we go out and do these observations. And then each of the reserves are going to give a little bit of help and tips on where to go for these BioBlitzes. So jumping right in, what is a bio?
Yeah. Will, really quick before you go on, I just want to let everybody know that this is not a normal Zoom. It's a webinar, and so most of you are attendees, which means you can't use your video or you're talking, you can't speak, but you can use the chat. And when you use the chat, there's a little to button, and it says to panelists or to panelists and attendees. So you're welcome to use that chat to speak to one another. There's also a Q&A function. So if you have like some philosophical question you want answered, we could get to those at the end, and you could place those in the Q&A. If you really want to speak, you can chat the panelists, and I can allow you to speak. And so just letting you know what the technological capabilities are for today. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah, for hopping in. I meant to say that and I forgot. So
that's okay.
If you have any questions, please feel free to use that chat box and we'll try to hit them all by the end. So what is a BioBlitz? What we are attempting to accomplish when we go out on these blitzes is basically observe and catalog all the living species that we can within a designated area on a designated date, with the idea of we're trying to document the biodiversity in these sites. And using the iNaturalist app, it's a wonderful tool that we can use to collect and store that data, and then we can go behind and use that data for different projects. And it's a wonderful tool, whether or not you are familiar with the organism you're looking at, or if it's something brand new to you. Even if you don't know what it is, it's a great tool to take that picture, and then we can use that iNaturalist app to crowdsource the identification effort. So experts can come behind and say, yes, I know exactly what this is, and ID it for us. So one of the reasons we do this, as I said, is just a way to catalog the biodiversity in an area. It's a wonderful opportunity to get out and take advantage of the amazing marine reserves that we have here in Oregon, and to just celebrate the amazing life that is in the intertide pool regions. So you can do a BioBlitz anywhere. Here for this year, for these blitzes, we're primarily focused at the tide pool regions. So this year, teaming up with Prime, one of the other things we are looking at is not just biodiversity, but also animal health. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here coming up. So who can do a BioBlitz? One of the awesome things about citizen science projects is really anyone can participate. Using that app, even as I said before, even if you don't know exactly what the organism is, you can take the picture, and then by uploading it to the iNaturalist app, certain data is recorded as where that picture was taken, what time, and then we can use that for different projects. So just a brief overview, if you've never been to one of our tide pools, these are some very common animals that you'll see out there. Giant green sea anemones and aggregating anemones are very common. Then up on top of the rocks, you might see a lot of California mussels. Ochre sea stars come in a variety of colors. Purple sea urchins, and then hidden amongst the rocks, you'll also see a variety of chitons and snails and limpets as well. These summer months are a wonderful time if you enjoy birding, because it's breeding season for the seabirds and shorebirds as well. And so these are some of the common birds that you might see while you're out there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tara to talk a little bit more about the reserves themselves.
Hi, everyone. So I just am going to do a quick review on Oregon's marine reserves. There are 5 marine reserves in Oregon that stretch from the north. We've got Cape Falcon, that is north of Manzanita. We have Cascade Head, which is just north of Lincoln City, Otter Rock, north of Newport, Cape Perpetua, which is Yachats to Florence, and Redfish Rocks at Port Orford. There are also 9 associated marine protected areas. You can see here on the map, there are the red areas, which are the marine reserves, and the blue areas, which are the protected areas. These marine reserves are managed by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Program, and they are based out of Newport. And they also work with a variety of community groups at each marine reserve to support community science, outreach, and education such as this. Next. And what ODFW is looking for in their research is they look at the marine reserve before it went into effect, restrictions went into effect, and they look at it after, and they also do the same at a comparison area to that marine reserve that is similar. And what they're hoping to get is look at what changes take place over time. And their goals are to conserve marine habitats and biodiversity, scientific research, which will start, these sites serve as scientific reference sites to inform marine reserve and nearshore ocean management, also known as living laboratories. And the third goal is to avoid significant economic adverse impacts to ocean users and coastal communities. And some differences between the marine reserves and marine protected areas. So the red bits you see on the map are marine reserves, like I mentioned, and all removal of marine life is prohibited. You're not allowed to take any wildlife, and there is no ocean development allowed. In the marine protected areas, there's still no ocean development allowed, but some take can occur, and that will vary depending on the marine reserve. Each site is very unique, so each site's kind of its own case study. And these reserves can go up to 3 nautical miles out into Oregon's territorial sea. And what you can do in these marine reserves is recreate. Any non-extractive activities are allowed in the marine reserves and protected areas, so they are available for full enjoyment in that way. And if you have any other questions or want to dig a little deeper on Oregon's marine reserves, I highly encourage you to check out the ODFW site, OregonMarineReserves.com. And they have an awesome library and a plethora of resources that you can dig deep into the data that they've started collecting and learn a little bit about each site. Next. And you can pick your place. So we're going to be chatting with you today about the different areas at each marine reserve that you can go to do your BioBlitz observations. But keep in mind that if you can't make it to a marine reserve because you're not located near one or just can't get to one, you can do this anywhere at any time. So this is relevant for anywhere you live. If you don't know what something is and you're very curious, pop it in your iNaturalist app as an observation, and anyone around the world can come back and help you out ID it.
Okay, so I am going to cover some safety. The first safety thing to consider is just safety for yourself because of the potentially dangerous nature of the intertidal zone and the ocean. So first off, picking a day where there is a low tide that is, you know, during the daytime and during good weather is key. We're going to spend a little time at the end talking about the best dates upcoming that you might go to at your particular reserve. One thing to be really cognizant of is the ocean swell. So typically in the summer months, this isn't a huge issue, but certainly checking the ocean swell online before you go is a great thing to do. Anything below about 6 feet is fairly safe. But more importantly, when you get there, take a look at the ocean, look at the waves, see how far they're running up, and make sure they're not covering the rocks that you're going to be on. Choosing to, knowing when the tide is, going at least an hour or so before slack tide is advisable. That way you're there as the tide is going out. And you can stay an hour after slack tide, but then the tide's coming in. So it becomes increasingly dangerous after about an hour past slack. Just be mindful of ocean conditions, pay attention because the ocean moves while you're standing still. So, you know, the tide might come up at you. And then finally, watch your step. So one of the easiest ways to hurt yourself at the ocean is to step on some slippery algae and fall. And so that is something you should always pay attention to. And then finally, like I said a moment ago, never turn your back on the ocean, especially keep your kids and your pets close to you. Don't let them wander off and get far ahead of you, and be very vigilant. The other safety concern is COVID, as we all know. So please follow current Oregon Health Authority guidelines and your state and local rules. Face coverings are encouraged, especially if you're not vaccinated. And then and especially when physical distancing isn't possible. Please practice physical distancing from people you don't live with, and stay home if you're sick. If you're high risk, we'd like you to sit this one out if you can, unless you can be extra certain that you're safe. And wash your hands frequently. And then, you know, cover your coughs and your sneezes and avoid touching your face. And then finally, tide pool etiquette. So like a moment ago when I said walk on bare rock for the sake of your own safety, we also want you to walk on bare rock or sand for the sake of the organisms. We would like to avoid crushing things. I mean, certainly mussels can probably handle your feet, but barnacles, not so much. Moths of algae, not so much. Anemones, not so much. And please don't remove anything. Even those shells that you find on the beach provide habitat for hermit crabs and such. And this is a reserve, so we're supposed to leave it as it is. If you do move an item, put it back where you found it. For all alive things, we strongly encourage you to gently touch it with a finger, but let's not pry things off the rock and move them around and harass them generally. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Like I said earlier, my name's Silka, and I'm a member of Primed and a grad student at OSU. I study the effects of sea star wasting and climate change on our rocky intertidal habitats. Tonight, I'll be introducing you to our project and then letting Lily and Deandra take over with some discussion about how to use iNaturalist, the really cool program that Will mentioned that we'll be using to track this year's observations. So you might be wondering, we've got our fancy new logo up here. What is Primed? And our name stands for Primary Responders in Marine Emergent Diseases, but in a non-acronym form. We're a group of people who are all studying or working with disease outbreaks in the sea. And we're a group of academics, veterinarians, managers, conservationists, community members, and many others. And we're a really diverse group, which is one of our strengths, but we share a common goal, which is to increase public awareness and opportunities for community engagement in detecting, monitoring, and then mitigating marine disease emergencies. Our group was formed after the 2013-2014 outbreak of sea star wasting syndrome, which was actually one of my first field seasons. I kind of watched that happen firsthand and then was really motivated to get involved with some of their response efforts. And you might be familiar with that disease outbreak that's been ongoing on our coast. And our response, and when I say our, again, I mean sort of our broader community of academics, vets, managers, kind of all the folks who got together and started talking sea stars when the reports of this disease emergency first started trickling in. And our response had a ton of successes, including I love to highlight the community science effort to track observations of wasting all along the US West Coast. But we also had some failures, and especially our sort of lack of organization and our slow response. We had never responded to a marine disease emergency of this scale and scope before. Left us with some areas where we're still trying to figure out some of the causative elements of this disease emergency. And so the only way to really be ready for a disease outbreak like this is to be paying attention and keeping an eye out for one, and then to have the infrastructure ready to respond to a disease emergency. Another way to think about this is that there is no CDC for wildlife, right? You can think about our current pandemic and think about how our response, where we would be at response-wise now, if we hadn't seen it coming from across the world, or if there was no World Health Organization or Centers of Disease Control to react and help coordinate our response. So we also think of ourselves sometimes as the CDC for wildlife. And you can hit the next slide, Will, thanks. And so this is a map showing each little wave represents a member of our primed group. And we have about 141 different folks from all over the place on our list now. And together we've been working on a number of projects related to both sea star wasting and marine disease response. But I'll finish up for today by sharing our motto with you, which is with toes on the beach, boots in the tide pools, and fins in the water, we're primed for the future. And we need your toes, boots, and fins, and we're all super excited that you're here to join us tonight and learn a little bit more about this. Sarah also threw the URL for our website in the chat, so if you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, the website has a ton of information. And I'll hand it over to Lily to share a little bit more about sort of what your toes, boots, and fins might look like in this year's BioBlitz. Thanks.
Hi guys, my name's Deandra. I'm going to talk a little bit about the iNaturalist app. So iNaturalist is an online social network with an active community of naturalists, scientists, and researchers. The app and website were both built to help you identify plants and animals using photo recognition and the help of experts. It's a platform where you can connect with other naturalists as well as create data that scientists can use. So how it works is you open up the app, you snap a photo of your observations, you upload that photo, at which point it can be shared with fellow naturalists. They can either confirm the identification of your species or they can suggest another identification. The really cool part about this app is that if you have a photo with enough confirmations, then that photo would be considered research grade and can be used for research purposes. So you can use iNaturalist on both a computer and a smartphone, but the easiest way to go about sharing your data is by downloading the app on your phone. So once you've got the app downloaded, you can go ahead and create an account. Creating an account is something that you might want to do before going out into the field or from home, just because it can take a long time and reception can be spotty once you're out into the field. But once you're all logged in, you can check out all the really cool features of the app. One of them being you can see observations that were submitted within your area. So Primed has created a project called Marine Wildlife Health. Submitting your observations allows us to collect information on the health status of marine organisms. We also have disease experts who can help confirm if an organism is in fact diseased. They can also help us confirm the identification of the species. Doing this allows us to track new diseases as well as monitor existing outbreaks. But we want to make sure that you guys are aware that we want healthy organisms submitted to our project as well, just because we use those healthy photos as a baseline for what was healthy prior to a disease outbreak. All of our observations will become a part of BioBlitz. And before I continue, I just want to say that if you have the app already downloaded, feel free to follow along. But if not, we do have a video up on YouTube called Prime iNaturalist Tutorial for iPhone that goes a little bit slower. So to find a project on iNaturalist, begin by selecting the project's icon. If you have an Apple phone, you may not see this icon at first, so select More and Project should be underneath this tab. If you have an Android, the project's icon should be underneath the main menu tab. So to find an account for a project, once you've selected that project's icon, a search icon should pop up, at which point you can type in the name of the project that you're familiar with. Again, we would love you guys to join Marine Wildlife Health. So once you type that project in, our account should pop up, at which point you just click that link and there should be a button on the top of the profile that says join. Once you select that join button, you'll be officially a part of our project and we'll be able to see the observations that you submit.
Hey, I'm Lily, an undergrad at OSU working with the Primed Network, and I'll be going over how to submit an observation to our Marine Wildlife Health Project. To make an observation, click on the camera icon that says Observe, and you'll be given the option to either take a new picture or select pictures from your camera roll. If it's safe to do so, you could try taking pictures from a couple different angles. This helps us better identify organisms and any presence of disease. Once you've selected your pictures, you'll be taken to a screen where you can add details about your observation. Next. From this screen, you can specify which organism you observed, when and where you observed it, and which project you'd like to add it to. First, you should identify the organism that you observed. So you'll click on the box that says, what did you see? iNaturalist uses photo recognition to bring up a list of suggestions, but you can search for organisms by their scientific and common names. If you aren't sure, that's okay, just go with your best guess. You can learn more about the iNaturalist suggestions by tapping the blue information icon to the right. It's common for people from the iNaturalist community to either confirm your identification or make new suggestions. If I were uploading the observation from the example, I would just go with Ladia limpets, the top suggestion, which is a genus, and nothing more specific because I'm not very familiar with limpets. Next. So after you identify the organism, you can edit the date, time, and location if needed. These details are usually auto-filled by iNaturalist, but it doesn't hurt to double check and make sure that they're correct. And if you aren't sure of the exact time, a rough estimate is totally fine. Below that, you can edit other details like whether or not the organism was captive. However, none of the observations should be of captive organisms. We are focused exclusively on wild animals. Next. So the last step is to add the observation to a project like Marine Wildlife Health. You'll only be given the option to do this after you've joined the project. So please make sure to do that before making observations. Otherwise, you'll need to go in and edit your observations. And if you forget to join first or you're already using iNaturalist, you can just add your previous observations to a project by editing them, which takes you to the details screen. So tap on Project at the bottom of the screen and toggle on Marine Wildlife Health. Next. So you'll then be asked to provide additional details about the organism, which we call health data. Under health status, you will select one of the following: healthy, diseased, non-disease issue, or unknown health. Select healthy if the organism doesn't appear to have any visible abnormalities, diseased if the organism appears unhealthy due to disease or pathogen, non-disease issue if the organism looks unhealthy due to a non-disease issue like stress or injury, and unhealthy if you aren't sure. Primed experts or other iNaturalist community members can make suggestions about the health status as well. Those descriptions are found at the top of the health status box. So moving on, under status, you will specify whether or not the organism was alive or dead. And under apparent health, you can type in the text box to let us know about anything else you think is relevant to the health of the organism. Next. After that, you're ready to submit your observation. Simply click Done at the top of the details screen, and your observation will upload to iNaturalist and the project. It can be hard to get reception in the field, so I recommend submitting the observations from your camera roll at home or anywhere with better reception. I would also like to clarify that when you submit to Marine Wildlife Health, it automatically gets captured by the BioBlitz, so there are no extra steps to participate in the BioBlitz. And I'll hand things back over to Deandra.
So I created a quick game just to get those of you who might be unfamiliar with identifying the health status of marine organisms a bit more familiar, just by going through a few organisms that we tend to see the most on the intertidal zone. So imagine you're walking on an intertidal zone during a low tide, of course, and you come across these 3 different sea stars. You take out your phone, you snap a photo of the organism, and when you get home later that day, you decide to upload the photo to your iNaturalist account. After uploading the photo, you are asked to identify the health status of the species. So we also want you to try to see if you can identify the health status of these California mussels. Just try to take a look at the skin and shell of the mussel. Are they crushed or cracked open? Do they look like they're suffering from some sort of disease? Or maybe they're affected by environmental factors? Those are all things that we should take into consideration.
All right, here's our results. You should be able to see that everybody guessed healthy for number 1. Deandra, is that right?
So that is right. The sea star is in fact healthy and alive. It appears to be very firm looking and has no visible lesions or disintegrated arms. So we can definitely say that the sea star is in fact healthy. And if we wanted to be a bit more specific, there's a section called Apparent Health where we can put a little bit more detail about the sea star. So in this case, we could write that it's normal looking. So for this sea star, it is diseased. The star clearly appears to be very limp, possibly suffering from sort of pathogen or disease. There appears to be some white lesions on one of the arms, and another arm looks like it might fall off. So if you weren't aware of this before, these are major characteristics of sea star wasting disease. So this Pisaster would be considered diseased.
And our results for number 3 were very split.
Were they? Okay. So
yeah.
It's kind of hard to see from this picture, but this sea star is healthy. There's no lesions and it's a firm looking sea star. What might have caught you guys off guard was the little white goo that's sort of over the sea star. What that is gametes or reproductive cells. So that sea star is actually spawning at the moment. So that would be considered a healthy sea star if you see it spawning. And so my best advice would be to write spawning in the apparent health section when you're uploading your observations. If you know, but if you don't know, that's fine. This mussel is in fact healthy. These mussels are usually found living in large groups in the intertidal zones, and they use their bristle threads, which are like these strong fibers that are attached to the inside of the mussel to anchor themselves onto the rock, which is how they survive the strong waves and the wind. The mussels in this photo are clearly tightly sealed and they're attached to the rock, so we could assume that they are in fact healthy. Now for this photo was actually taken the day after it was nearly 100 degrees outside. So in this case, we see that it is a dense aggregation of mussels, and they could have very well died from an infectious disease, but it would also be logical to assume that they died of high temperatures, causing the mussels to essentially cook themselves. So this brings me to my final point that I want to emphasize. If we are submitting an organism and we don't know the apparent health status, or we're unsure of how it became diseased, we would just put health unknown. It's totally fine to put health unknown.
All right, I think at this point we're gonna kick it over to the Marine Reserve representatives to talk a little bit about each specific site and where it goes.
All right, great. Thank you, Will. As I said before, my name is Margaret, and I am the program coordinator for Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. So Cape Falcon Marine Reserve is on Oregon's north coast. It's the northernmost marine reserve site, and it is just off of Oswald West State Park between Manzanita and Cannon Beach. And it includes a marine reserve plus 2 MPAs. And we have 2 active iNaturalist projects. Those are BioBlitz 2021 at Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, and then also the Cape Falcon Species Inventory, which is observations at any time. And for both of these, if you make an observation in that area and during the time of the BioBlitz, it'll automatically go into both of these iNaturalist projects. And then if you make observations in the area outside of that time period of the BioBlitz, it'll still go into the Cape Falcon Species Inventory. So you don't need to specifically add it. Next slide. So just a little bit about the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. It's 20 square miles, and it's made up of a no-take marine reserve, and that's the red in the map there, and 2 associated marine protected areas. And as Tara explained, marine protected areas, there's some take allowed. So in the West MPA, which is that last mile out into the ocean, salmon fishing by troll and crabbing are both allowed out there. And then there's a shoreside MPA that runs along Falcon Cove Beach. And in that area, you're allowed to do recreational fishing by hook and line from the sandy beach only, not from the rocky areas. And Cape Falcon Marine Reserve is right next to Oswald West State Park, like I said, and that's 2,500 acres of conserved coastal rainforest. So that location makes it part of an interconnected system of conserved ecosystems on the land and in the ocean. And it's also next to the huge new acquisition that North Coast Land Conservancy is working on, which will add a sizable chunk of acreage to conserved forest areas right next to the Marine Reserve. So that really just boosts the resilience of all of those protected areas. So we're really excited about that. And next slide. So the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve is the community team up here on the North Coast that spreads awareness and appreciation of the Marine Reserve. And we do that through guided hikes, community science projects, including the BioBlitz and also seabird monitoring, and through webinars and community lectures. And this year, we also have started a new Tide Pool Ambassadors program. So if you want to learn more about that, you could contact us. Next slide. So we do our BioBlitz primarily at the north end of Neocani Beach. So that's where those images from the first slide were taken. And this is maybe not thought of as a kind of prime tide pooling place, but actually if you go during the minus tides during the summer, you can actually see some really cool animals out in the rocky areas at the north end of Neocani Beach. So this map shows you where the parking locations are, and then you take about a 0.3 mile walk up the beach, which is beautiful, so no complaints there, to the tide pool areas. But any other observations that you record along Cape Falcon Marine Reserve will also be included in the BioBlitz. Next slide. So here I've pulled out the times for the, I guess that's 9 lowest tides during the BioBlitz period. So any observations you make in the area along the shore, along the marine reserve from June 25th to July 26th will be included in the BioBlitz, but these are the best times to be out there because that's when the lowest low tides are. So that starts on June 25th with an early morning -2, which is the best one we've got. So if you want to get out at a really good low tide early in the morning, that's the one to go for. And you can see there are a bunch of other options too, so you can pick whatever works best for you. And so we are going to be offering a free Cape Falcon Marine Reserve water bottle to the person who is on this webinar and logs the most observations in Cape Falcon Marine Reserve during the BioBlitz period. So if you would like to be in the running for that water bottle, get out there maybe a couple different mornings and log some observations. And that is it. So I'll pass it on to Tara, or no, to Will, who's filling in for Paul. That's right.
And I'm gonna kick it over to Fawn.
Oh, okay, awesome.
All right, next slide. So I'm here to help Paul representing Cascade Head Marine Reserve. Cascade Head is one of our medium-sized marine reserves. It's actually at the north end of that is at Cascade Head Marine Reserve. And if you've ever hiked up on the mountain there, which is also preserved by the Nature Consortium. So anyway, it's part of UNESCO Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve. Lincoln City to Nescoin consists of a marine reserve and 3 marine protected areas in amongst that. The monitoring there began in 2012. So Cascade Head and Otter Rock were actually 2 of the first marine reserves to be started there. All right, next slide. So when you're looking at Cascade Head, again, all of our marine reserves go out the 3 miles, but then the length and what's happening on the inside is where you'll see the difference. Most of what we're going to be observing for the BioBlitz is up on Road's End. So if you're coming north or going north into Lincoln City, you go all the way out the other end, and at the last light, you would turn left and follow that road, Road's End, all the way down to the state park. Coming from the north, it's the light coming in. So parking facilities there at the recreation area. You've got plenty of area to park there. And then from that point, we actually hike about 20 minutes, about a mile up the beach to the actual tide pools. During the minus tide, you will actually see some rocky outcroppings with organisms. Feel free to record and observe those as well, because again, that'll give us a really good indication of how those organisms survive when we have the much drier days, whether or not there are any now or at other times of the year. So anywhere along there is good for the BioBlitz. Next slide. If you want to find out a little bit more about the Cascade Head Marine Reserve, And the group there, it's cascadehead.org/events, because they offer other opportunities as well. The minus tides that they're going to be working with are June 25th through the July 25th. And here you want to kind of keep an eye out for swells that are about 1 to 3 feet, because this is a really low tide pool area as well. Okay. All right, the next one is Otter Rock Marine Reserve, and I am one of the volunteers that represents Otter Rock. We've been trying to get our little group together for a while, and we're just now really starting to get organized. But so if anybody really wants to become part of our little community group, we'd love to have you. We are actually located on the central coast of Oregon, so we're the most centrally located. We're also the smallest marine reserve, more like a picture postcard stamp of that. And it was basically because the fishermen said, we don't really fish there, so you guys can have it, which gives us a really good basis for, the research that takes place there. Next slide. All right, so as you see, looking at this, for the Otter Rock Marine Reserve, it goes to Cape Falcon. The biggest rock that you'll see out there normally when you're right on the beach is Gull Rock. Just south of that is Whaleback, and the furthest south is Otter Rock, which is more in front of Beverly Beach State Park. Next slide. Okay, so where to go? All right, so in the picture on the left, this is where most people will want to go, is down to the Marine Garden there. That's Gull Rock that you see, and this is on the north side of the Punch Bowl. So if you're looking at the little map that we have here, turning down on First Street, which is the red line, if you follow that way to the end, that would take you directly to the Punch Bowl. On the right hand side, where you see the red line, take a right. That's where a restroom is and where one of the parking lots is. Just past that, where you see the little arrow that Will is pointing at, is the larger parking lot, and then he's following the trail that'll take you down onto the beach to the north side, where the Marine Garden is, and where you can actually enter the Punch Bowl. So that whole area will be an area that we'll be observing. If you would like, when you're coming down First Street, on the left side, instead of taking a right, there's actually a staircase that goes down on the south side of the Punch Bowl. And that is also a really great rocky outcropping there. So, making any observations there would be amazing, as well. So you can pick or choose any, either beach to make your observations. Okay, next slide. All right, so here are the days that we've got for Otter Rock. As you can see, all of our beaches vary just a little bit as you move up and down the coast. We won't be there obviously every day, because the very early ones, unless you're an early bird, you may want to be there. On Friday the 25th, Dennis White will be on the beach, and I think Dr. Hansen was thinking about being down there then as well. And that's starting at 7:25. It's a minus 2.9. So it'll be really great if you want to get out there that early and get into the Punch Bowl. On Saturday, I will be there from about 8 till noon. And I'll have on my red or bright orange rain pants, so you'll be able to see me there. And then you actually also have an opportunity on Sunday to go down. And then the other dates that we have are in July. I'm not really sure exactly what date yet that I'll be down there, probably on Sunday, July 25th, to help with anybody who needs to make observations there. If you have any other questions, I'll put my email in the chat box, and then you can get hold of us for Otter Rock. Thank you.
All right, so we'll continue further down the coast, where we'll hit Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve. This is Oregon's largest marine reserve, and it's located on the central Oregon coast between Yachats and Florence. It includes a marine reserve, 2 marine protected areas, and Oregon's only seabird protection area. And this, there's the Cape Perpetua Collaborative, which is a group that The vision is to foster conservation and collaboration within local communities for scientific exchange, management, awareness, and stewardship from land and sea. And so I have our website here, capeperpetualcollaborative.org. You can learn more about us and check out the projects we work on and different events we have. We have an events calendar, and there's some really great visitor resources on the website as well. And please connect up with us on our Facebook page at Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve. It's always great to connect with folks that way. And we have a really, we're really starting to fill out our YouTube channel with a variety of wonderful presentations. So please check that out. Next. In the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve, a little bit more about that. It hosts an offshore, deep, isolated rocky reef, and there's no similar habitat in the nearby area for that. The site also, which at this isolated rocky reef is home to a wide variety of groundfish and invertebrates. And this area is also adjacent to a protected old growth coastal rainforest. And again, it stretches between Yachats and Florence with the Marine Reserve and protected areas altogether. So there are several areas and state parks where you can pull off for tide pooling. And so I've listed those here. Starting from north to south, there's Yachat State Park, Cape Perpetua Marine Gardens, that is just below the Visitor Center, Neptune State Scenic Viewpoint, Strawberry Hill, Bob Creek, Ocean Beach Picnic Area, Tokatee, and Heceta Head. And please keep in mind, while there are many spots you can pull off the tide pool, they have very limited parking. So as the coast gets busier and busier and the summer months are coming, and especially with these negative tides with people wanting to get out, if the parking is full, I encourage you to keep going to the next location and see what you can find there. I've also listed a variety of negative tides and their dates and times. But if you're interested, we use the Willy Weather app at Cape Perpetua. So you can just type in Willy Weather Cape Perpetua tides, and that'll pull out the tides for that area that would be relevant. And we do have a BioBlitz project as well. So anything that you do within the Cape Perpetua area will get linked up to our project. And even if you're in the forest and are taking observations, we can observe those as well. So please don't stop at the ocean, take it inland with you too. I look forward to seeing your observations. Have fun with it.
All right, and we are moving down south to Redfish Rocks Marine Reserve. We are the furthest south marine reserve on the Oregon coast, just south of the town of Port Orford, Oregon. We're about an hour and change from the California border, so we're considerably further south from the next furthest south marine reserve. All right, there we are. So the Marine Reserve is located about halfway between the town of Port Orford, which is a fishing community, and Humbug Mountain State Park. You can identify the Redfish Rocks pretty easily because we have these 5 prominent sea stacks which are coming out of the water. You can see them from town. They're beautiful and quite noticeable. And were previously very heavily fished. So it's cool that it's now a marine reserve supported by our community where we can observe fish stocks and how they're changing over time. Yeah, I will mention, sorry, it's a relatively small marine reserve. We're just about 2.7 square kilometers, or square miles, sorry. And then we have our MPA stretching out westward towards Oregon's territorial sea. And we were founded in 2012, although monitoring efforts began in 2010. So those take restrictions began in 2012, making us one of Oregon's first marine reserves along with Otter Rock. All right, so ways to access Redfish Rocks intertidal areas. I think the best one is Rocky Point, which is again halfway between Port Orford and Humbug State Park. You'll see a sign, it's not super noticeable, but the sign does say Rocky Point, and you can pull off on the right of the highway. There is a small parking area, it's not huge, and a trail that leads down to the beach. And the tide pooling there is really great. I remember last year I found a lot of really cool nudibranchs on some of these negative tides. Another way to access, which I don't have circled on this map, is you can park at the Humbug Mountain State Park parking lot. Thank you for that. See the arrow down there? And you can then walk under the 101, and there's a trail that will spit you out at the beach at Humbug, and you can just walk north from there and begin making observations. Next slide, please. Awesome. So here we have listed some good dates and negative tides throughout from, I guess our range is June 25th through July 25th. So you have a lot of options here. We have some of these negative tides I'm noticing are some of the lowest that we see on our coast. So we've got a negative 2.6 this coming Friday, which is awesome, negative 2.5. So you'll definitely see me out there during some of these really low lows. There are a lot of them in the early morning. So if you get up early, you might find those really cool sea creatures hiding out there. And that's all I've got. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and our website is Redfish Rocks at redfishrocks.org. Thank you.